Colleagues, can we give a warm round of applause to all of our guests and our presenters joining us today? You can take your seats. Thank you very much. Friends and colleagues, I warmly greet you all. Molweni, Dumalang, Sanibonani, Molo, Pakeni, Tobela, Salams, Goeiemorgen. Good morning to you all. I'm Ashley van Niekerk. I'm a professor at the Unisa Institute for Social and Health Sciences, or the ISHS. The ISHS is the proud convener of the annual Peace, Safety and Human Rights Memorial Lecture. I'm very pleased to say that today we are hosting the 20th such lecture. I will chair today's proceedings. Please do take a look at the program. It's this one. You should have a copy. There are a couple of short house rules. Please switch off your cell phone or put it on silent mode. To those of you that are new to Unisa, the bathrooms are just outside the wall. So you might see it. It's signed just as you leave the entrance. If you can also note that the event is being live streamed, there may be some of you that do not wish to be recorded. Please do alert one of the organizing staff to assist you with respect to this. Colleagues, the Memorial Lecture is an annual event that was initially inspired in celebration of the freedom struggle contributions of South Africa's first Minister of Justice, Dalla Omar, and Mr. Joe Moabi, who sometime in the 1990s joined the ISHS, the Institute for Social and Health Sciences, as a community organizer. My apologies, colleagues. I wasn't aware that this is Nana Moabi, Joe's daughter. Apologies, Nana, for us not waiting a bit for you. Both Joe Moabi and Minister Omar were amongst many at the time who had spent their lives advancing freedom and justice in South Africa and further afield. There have, of course, been many others that have championed social justice at the time and since. Some already recognized for their great courage, others steadfastly, but sometimes not with much recognition, going about the labor of building the Africa and the world that we want. This lecture celebrates these contributions to social justice. As we open the lecture, I invite you all to share a moment's silence as we reflect on the sacrifices made not just by Joe Moabi and Dalla Omar, but others and those that are still actively working in the pursuit of social justice across the planet. Many thanks to you all. I now call on Professor Solomon Magano. Prof. Magano is the acting Vice-Chancellor and the current Unisa Vice Principal for Institutional Development. Prof, if you can join us to formally welcome and open this meeting. Prof. Magano, of course, is a member of the university's Executive Management Council and one of the university's great champions, noted for his efforts to promote Unisa, its standing and its impact in the country and on the continent, the quality and the excellence of its teaching and of its research programming, and for in general enhancing Unisa as a place for transformation and transformative growth and learning. Prof. Magano, I hand over to you.
Program Director, Professor Van Niekerk, many thanks for granting me the opportunity to extend warm greetings to the attendees as well as to welcome them to this meaningful event. And let me appreciate you for the wonderful remarks that you have just made. Members of the executive management of the university, the Omar and Moabi family representatives present here this morning, the Honorable Dr. Grace Naledi Pandor, who is the guest speaker for this event, Professor Seth Cooper, the respondent, other program participants, notably Professor Pulen Sehalo, the Albert Lutuli Chair, Professor Mashau, the Deputy Executive Dean of the College of Human Sciences, all members of the Unisa epistemic community, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. My forebears would say, Saho Lamoeng Lebewa Gimonghai, which suggests that it is the host who dictates the seating arrangement when receiving visitors. Now, I want to declare upfront that Monghai, the host, is not around. She is entangled by other university obligations, but she has nonetheless requested us to extend her gratitude and support for this important event in the calendar of our university. Program Director, Professor Van Niekerk, I am delighted to be able to step into the shoes of the Principal and Vice Chancellor of the University of South Africa, Professor Puleng Lenkabula, to give the welcome address to this august audience this morning. Due to competing priorities, as I've indicated, the Principal and Vice Chancellor of our university could regrettably not be able to join us this morning. However, please allow me on behalf of the University of South Africa to bring you greetings from the Unisa Chancellor and former State President of our country, His Excellency Dr. Thabo Mbeki, and the Principal, as I've indicated, Professor Puleng Lenkabula, as well as the Council of the University of South Africa, ably led by Dr. Musia. We warmly welcome you all to the 20th Annual Peace, Safety, and Human Rights Memorial Lecture. I greet you all in the name of peace, justice, and solidarity. In particular, allow me to welcome our keynote guest, the Honorable Dr. Naledi Pandor. Dr. Pandor, you have honored us greatly by joining us today in the magnificent Z.K. Matthews Great Hall. It is here that thousands of Unisa graduates annually receive their hard-won diplomas and degrees, and realize the cherished dreams and heartfelt aspirations for themselves and their families. It is exhilarating for us as members of the Unisa epistemic community that the esteemed granddaughter of Professor Zachariah Kiudirileng Matthews, after whom this hall is named, is here with us this morning to grace the 20th memorial lecture. There could not have been a better person to deliver this lecture than you, Dr. Pando. We truly appreciate your presence in this event. Today, yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Today, I'm also delighted to warmly welcome the families of Re Joe Moabi and Minister Dula Omar. This memorial lecture was initially inspired by the huge commitments of those who, like Minister Dula Omar, the Minister of Justice in the first democratic South African government in 1994, and Mr. Joe Moabi, one of thousands of comrades who had at that time returned from exile. Mr. Moabi joined the Unisa Institute for Social and Health Sciences and helped us build and invigorate the Unisa's community development program in Johannesburg South. We thus today welcome the Moabi and the Omar families, even as we thank them for allowing us to celebrate the achievements and sacrifices made by all those who have struggled for peace, justice, and liberation for South Africa and for the oppressed people elsewhere who continue to live under inhumane conditions. The annual Peace, Safety, and Human Rights Memorial Lecture is an event that has been hosted by the Unisa Institute for Social and Health Sciences in Unisa's College of Human Sciences since the year 2006. This lecture has strived to celebrate the agencies of safety, peace, human rights, and social justice for all. It has simultaneously aimed to deepen our understanding of freedom as well as prepare us for living with one another on the planet in fair, just, and equal ways. Over these 2 decades, the annual Peace, Safety, and Human Rights Memorial Lecture Series has often engaged the most pressing concerns of our time, whether be political, economic, social, and planetary. Multiple speakers have taken on a range of topics and have done so from different locations in and beyond the global South. Mr. Program Director, the series has come to represent an important intellectual and activist archive, one that is simultaneously innovative, insightful, and deeply impactful. This important annual event has been sustained through considerable labor and commitment. I am of the view that the series' 20th year of existence is certainly a milestone worth celebrating in gratitude. I thus warmly congratulate the Institute for Social and Health Sciences on this important milestone, and I do want to believe the applause are quite relevant here. The lecture theme for this year is Fascism, Deepening, Inequality and Genocide, 21st Century Threats to Freedom and National Determination. The theme reflects the current dire global threats to self-determination and national autonomy. Ladies and gentlemen, the world has witnessed with deep alarm and distress the growth of fascist politics, deepening global inequalities, genocide, and the subjugation of international systems of accountability meant to uphold global justice. We are currently witnessing several ongoing attempts to erase entire races or nations, most notably and visibly at this moment in Palestine, but also in countries in our continent, including in the South Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo, and in several other parts of the world. These genocides have been enabled and found traction in the current global political climate, marked by strengthened far-right and fascist movements, enfeebled liberalism, all which have in turn given rise to policies and state actions that draw on ethnocentric, anti-immigrant, and racist sentiments. This far-right and fascist turn has particularly been witnessed through, for example, the escalation of targeted anti-immigration campaigns, the persecution of local political opponents and dissenting voices, the constrictions to freedom of speech, and subjugation of international legal and other systems. It has been argued to fuel the entrenchment of capitalistic structures and the deepening rates of inequality across the globe, with devastating consequences for many. Mr. Program Director, today's lecture provides us with a timely opportunity to reflect on where we as South Africans are located within the current struggles for freedom. What can we do and how can we best support the current struggles? Unisa is greatly honored to have the Honorable Dr. Grace Naledi Pandor as our keynote speaker on the very same theme, Fascism, Deepening, Inequality, and Genocide, the 21st Century Threats to Freedom and National Determination. Dr. Pandor was a member of Parliament from the year 1994 to 2024. And amongst other esteemed portfolios, she was the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation from 2019 until 2024. It was during her tenure as Minister of International Relations that South Africa brought its genocide case before the International Court of Justice regarding Israel's conduct in Gaza. Our country called on the International Criminal Court to issue arrest warrants for, among others, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant. I'm honored and pleased to welcome the Honorable Dr. Pandor to the ZK Matthews Great Hall. Professor Zachariah Kiudirileng Matthews was an African intellectual giant of the 20th century. He was also instrumental in crafting one of South Africa's most important documents, the Freedom Charter, which shaped the constitutional destiny of our country. Professor Z.K. Matthews has left an indelible mark on Unisa, both through his distinguished academic career and his influence in shaping the institution's intellectual and political character. We are deeply proud and happy to welcome Minister Naledi Pandor, the granddaughter of Professor Z.K. Matthews, to this occasion. Dr. Pandor, we looking forward with great anticipation for an engaging and enriching lecture this morning. I thank you all.
Thanks so much, Prof, for setting out some of the macro context and the significance of today's lecture. Before we get to the keynote, we invite the Omar and Moabi family reps to join in a second. The Moabi family is represented today by Portia Nana and Tate Joe's Moabi's daughter, Molefi Peto, Kotso, Jacinta Goliath, and a family friend, Dr. Leboang Peko. Dr. Peko, whose father served alongside Ntate Moabe during the struggle, is a renowned academic and political commentator, and she will say a few words on behalf of the Moabi family. The Omar family is represented today by Ms. Latifa Omar and Mrs. Mariam Omar, Minister Omar's sisters, and Mr. Mashit Moza, a close family friend. Mr. Mauser is a social activist whose friendship with Omar began in the early 70s as a fellow founding member of the Thornhill Residents Association. He serves as the chairperson of the Thornhill Community Trust, which is where Dalla Omar formed and managed at the time the Dalla Omar Center, which is in Cape Town in a suburb called Rylands. Mr. Mauser will say a few words on behalf of the Omar family. On behalf of the ISHS, we're deeply grateful that the families are stuck with us and with this project. And so we thank you for joining us again today, as you have at each of the lectures over the last 20 years. Can I invite Dr. Peko to talk first on behalf of the Marble family, and then Mr. Mauser, if you join us after that. Come through. Thanks so much.
Good morning, all. Do better. Good morning, all. Good morning. Thank you so much to the families, to Mema Lady Pando, who is a bit of a shiro of many of us, I think, and to all of us who are gathered here as freedom thinkers, as freedom actors, as students and guests, and fellow citizens of conscience. I greet you all very warmly. And indeed, our families have a strong and intricate history. And I think Nana was reminding me last year when my father passed that my father was part of the Lobola negotiations at her wedding in London in 1980, Mang. It feels like 1,000 years ago. So the ties are very tight indeed. But today, we're doing much more than remembering Uncle Joe, Bra Joe Moabi. We're invoking a framework for understanding freedom in this era. A framework that asks us not only what we fought for yesterday, but what we must defend today and tomorrow. Ndate Moabi was not just a biography to be recited. He was a principle to be practiced. He practiced leadership as stewardship, resources as public trust, and freedom as continuous practice rather than just a moment in time. Through his example, we address the intertwined threats to our shared future. The re-emergence of fascist politics as per the theme of the day, the persistence and rebranding of Western imperialism, and the chronic fragility of international accountability that ought to be a safeguard for dignity for all people. And today, fascism in the 21st century wears different guises. It uses digital surveillance, law and order, rhetoric, global governance, manufactured crisis to erode due process, and to stigmatize dissent. It manipulates the language of national pride to justify exclusion, while quietly outsourcing the burden of security to dispossessed communities. The danger is not only in overt violence, but in the normalization of inequity as policy. Uncle Joe's legacy is an ethic of integrity, of communal care, and of disciplined organizing. It remains a bulwark against this drift. He modeled governance as guardianship, not domination, a practice of mobilizing resources for collective resiliences rather than personal gain. So when we think about imperial power today and how it often operates through mechanisms that look benign, loans, humanitarian aid, security partnerships, but with very long shadows, conditionalities that hollow out our sovereignty, and market-centric reforms that privilege capital over people, we have to ask ourselves who benefits when borders become marketing lines and become leverages. And again, Uncle Joe's approach, transnational solidarity, education as emancipation, and the building of durable, legitimate solutions offers a counter model. Self-determination is strengthened when communities control their own economic futures, when decisions about resources are guided by public welfare, not just external and often very opaque interests. So accountability as a universal demand. This architecture of international accountability remains imperfect, uneven, and subject to great power calculus. Genocide, mass displacement, crimes against humanity demand timely and credible responses, not rhetoric that's delayed by geopolitics. This is not a call for punitive vengefulness, but is a call for principled universal standards that apply to all people and all states. Uncle Joe's life demonstrates the power of integrity in public life and the necessity of transparent stewardship. Justice is strengthened when leaders insist on accountability within their own communities and push for independent, effective mechanisms that transcend national borders. So when we think about Uncle Mabi's thorough line, integrity, education, and solidarity, if we can extract a core principle from Ntate Moabi's practice, it is this: leadership guided by integrity acts as a public resource. He demonstrated this by organizing, education, and ethical stewardship are not opposites, but mutually enforcing. In his work, whether mobilizing resources for the PAC or guiding youth in El Dorado Park after his return, Uncle Mabi treated wealth, knowledge, and networks as instruments for collective upliftment. And today, we translate that into action. Firstly, integrity as a method. We insist on truthful, transparent governance and accountability. Secondly, education as an engine. Cultivate critical literacy, civic literacy, the tools to participate in decision-making about one's future. Thirdly, solidarity as a strategy, building cross-border coalitions that bind communities together and build similar bulwarks to fight for dignity, sovereignty, and justice. So when we translate memory into policy and practice, let us consider these concrete steps: institutional reforms, economic justice, global solidarity, and memory as policy. Let us close with a vision, a horizon that respects the scars of the past while insisting on a future shaped by courage and care and shared responsibility. Freedom is not a solitary banner, but a chorus that travels across seas and cities, binding us to those who struggle today and those who will walk tomorrow's road. May accountability be as universal as the dawn. May justice become the quiet gravity that steadies every nation when the winds of empire blow. Let the memory of Ntate Moabi ground us in practical integrity and generous solidarity so that the self-determination of people become not just a footnote of history, but the living practices of our time. Ke a leboha.
Thank Thank you so much, Dr. Peko. We invite Mr. Mauser. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Program Director, the Acting Vice Chancellor, our beloved Dr. Naledi Pandor, members of the academic community, distinguished guests, both in the auditorium and joining us online, greetings of peace to all. It is a profound privilege and honor to speak on behalf of the Omar family. So thank you, Auntie Farida. I hope you're watching us. I know you were not able to join us today, and we wish you a speedy recovery. And Auntie Farida also expresses her gratitude and thanks to the university for hosting this memorial lecture. Let me also express our deep appreciation to the Institute for Social and Health Sciences for hosting the 20th memorial lecture, honoring the legacy of two giants in the struggle for human rights, Mr. Joe Moabe and Advocate Abdullah Dalla Umar. Dalla Umar was a human rights activist that treated every person with humility and dignity. A true servant leader, highly ethical, modest, and truly a people's lawyer. In the few minutes allocated, I wish to share with you some of the wise teachings of Comrade Dalla. He was a man of few words, but each one was born of deep reflection. One of his central lessons was that we must strive to be problem solvers, peacemakers, and nation builders. First, as problem solvers, in our country, we must start with ethical servant leadership to halt the corrupt practices that have enveloped the state and society. These practices deprive the most vulnerable of their dignity and human rights. Dalla Umar would expect us to raise our voices, unify the marginalized, and build structures for genuine consultation and active participation. Second, as peacemakers, today we see the gap between the haves and the have-nots widening rather than narrowing as we strive for equity. Countless people languish in poverty and unemployment, their dignity systematically stripped away. Globally, we witness wars that impoverish the vulnerable, leading to an unacceptable loss of human life and tragic damage to our environment. This was not the world Comrade Dalla envisioned. He would compel us to ask, what must be done? The answer lies in our unwavering pursuit of justice and equality for all. Finally, as nation builders, we are witnessing a rise in racism, both locally and internationally, and an erosion of democratic values. Our young democracy faces immense challenges, with declining voter participation and the voices of the marginalized being silenced. Dalla would have urged us to redouble our efforts to ensure the marginalized regain their voice, to strengthen our democratic structures, and to actively participate in governance to build a better life for all. In conclusions, friends and comrades, the situation we find ourselves in means we have much work to do. We must take heed of the lessons and the legacy bequeathed to us by Comrades Dalla Umar and Comrade Joe Moabe. Together, we can build a better world. The struggle for a free and just society continues. A luta continua Long live the spirit of Comrades Joe Moabe and Darama. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mauser, Dr. Peko, for these stirring insights, these evocations of the contributions that Joe and Dalla highlighted in the 1990s already, of integrity, of human dignity, solidarity, and what all of these mean in terms of the ongoing calls for action that we still hear, or we should be hearing, and should be resonating with events today. At every lecture, we have the opportunity to reflect on an aspect of their lives, which is really wonderful, and their contributions. And so thank you for sharing all of this with us. Before we proceed to the keynote, we have a short interlude, and I'd like to welcome Shamila Roshani. Shamila is a Berlin-born poet, writer, and performer of German-Iranian descent, who is currently based in Johannesburg. Their work explores themes such as fluidity and belonging, and was featured on various international platforms. They released their debut album, The Pride of Water, in 2023, and recently completed a BA Honours in Creative Writing with distinction at the University of the Western Cape, of the Witwatersrand. I should have said Unisa, but University of the Witwatersrand. Shamila is currently finalizing their first full-length poetry collection. We warmly welcome you to Unisa.
To lose one's mind. To lose one's mind is to lose oneself. To lose one's mind is to lose oneself inside it, inside it. Sanity has been a limping companion lately, but we keep marching. As long as the heart aches, it has not yet fallen apart. Empires ramp up their arms as the planet tumbles into war. The sharpened rhetoric sinks deep into throats. The wrong ones, always the wrong ones, always the wrong ones. Death huddles close now, no longer lingering only in dreams. Grief always in reach, sleep a treacherous ghost. Too many cries for help masquerading as jokes. Too many chuckles choking on silence, both next door and on my world's other end. Distance a most quiet accomplice. Phone calls barely a plaster on the void. My ear is always alert, but perked inward too. To lose one's mind is to lose oneself inside it. To lose one's mind is to lose oneself inside it. To lose one's mind is to lose oneself inside it. To lose one's mind is to lose oneself inside it, inside it, inside it, inside it. Escape can be a thread of words unwinding into a gathering. Remedy takes different forms. Breath can master the maddest force. Movement lends rhythm to tumbling thoughts. I manifest luck from another pile of shards. Pouring from a leaking cup is messy, but we keep trying. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jamila Roshani. It's such a pleasure to be here, such an honor to be in the presence of esteemed guests, but most importantly in the presence of people who stand up for justice and who have been standing up for justice for longer than I have been on this earth, perhaps. So thank you very much for having me. As my bio mentioned, I am of German-Iranian descent, even though I've been based here in Joburg for quite a while now, and it's been incredibly concerning and frankly very scary to see where Germany, where Europe, where the Western world as a whole is headed. The rise of authoritarianism, fascism, the scapegoating of the vulnerable as usual, migrants, obviously people of Muslim belief, but generally just black and brown people. And so the next piece was my attempt to, since clearly the world doesn't seem to care about the voices of Palestinians or black and brown people in general, to speak from the perspective of a missile, right? And to hope that maybe if the weapon itself was to speak, someone would listen. Can I get a little bit more volume, please? Thank you. I never wanted this. I never wanted to be born. I'm a missile in a genocide, despising my own cause. Despising my cause, despising this world, despising myself. With explosives for a heart, with fuel in my veins, my every body part precision. I cannot fail you when you aim, you who fire me from my launcher's gaping mouth, while you are stationed miles away, unharmed by my debris. You call me smart, infuse my brain with intel gathered by your drones, install a guidance system that cannot make me miss my target, and yet, I know nothing of the places I destroy. I know nothing. Nothing. I know nothing of the withering of dreams, the splintering of grief, the flickering of rage, the quiver of the cage. All of it gets swallowed by the crater that I leave. You have cursed me with a death that multiplies. You have coerced me into a mission that isn't mine. You who built my rocket. You who press my button, and worst of all, you who just keep watching. You who build me, you who export me, you who fund me, you who support me, you who ignore me, you who keep silent, you who sleep peacefully at night. You, land of the free that drops death on the unfree. And you, land of never again, but too blinded by your guilt. Enabling again as it happens in the present. Enabling again in the present. Enabling. Sometimes I wish myself upon you all, blazing in my pain, searching for a way to use my blast for justice and blow up in your face. But I know how hatred feels. I know how much it takes. From you and me and all of us, this ground that we must share. So more than anything in these burning skies, I want to wipe up and wipe out the vision of genocide in your eyes. It takes you and me and all of us. It takes you and me and all of us. It takes you and me and all of us. It takes you and me and all of us. It takes you and me and all of us. Thank you. I will close off with one last piece, which is really just a way to give myself and hopefully some of us and some of you some hope, because I think hope is very important, even though it's very hard to have. And so this is dedicated to the people and the communities that have helped to keep me sane in the past 2 years. Show me the mundane in this madness. Show me the calm in the cauldron, the soft in the sadness, the balm on the burn, the mundane in the madness, the calm in the cauldron, the soft in the sadness, the mundane in the madness, the soft in the sadness, the balm on the burn, the calm in the cauldron, the soft in the sadness, the mundane in the madness. Show me, show me, show me. Here, I've learned to trace a shade of gloom even on the brightest of days. I await the croaking of crows even amidst radiant rays. A hovering heavy upbraids our calm and sharpens from it a blade. And I ready my tough and load my guns and aim for the creatures above, but I'm afraid these omens circling between us and the sun have grown intimate with our love. How easy to seek a partner in arms when doom persistently looms. Easier still to forget that our own shadows huddle here too. And easiest to confuse at night which ones to build altar and which ones tomb. Which ones to build altar and which ones tomb. Which ones to build altar and which ones tomb. Will you be my mundane in the madness? My soft in the sadness, my calm in the cauldron, my balm on the burn, my soft in the sadness, my mundane in the madness, my calm in the cauldron, my soft in the sadness. Will you be? Will you? Here, we wake up to one-year-old gossip simmering in the kitchen. We remember the people who are missing from this table during breakfast. We drench our baklava in too much honey to drown the bleak in sweetness. We sit amidst Farsi laughter and Palestinian poems that collapse the walls into wholeness. We ridicule separation's intent by trading our views of the moon. We hug the distance so tight the night begins to swoon. We fight each fear with dreams so timeless they rise beyond the present. We love despite the vile that surrounds us, willingly, widely and wild, willingly, widely and wild, willingly, wildly and wild. We love despite everything, despite. We love despite everything, despite. We are the mundane and the madness, the soft and the sadness, the calm in the cauldron, the balm on the burn, the soft in the sadness, the mundane in the madness, the calm in the cauldron, the balm on the burn. We are everything. Thank you.
Jamila, thank you for sharing your wonderful talent with us. Colleagues, I am now delighted to welcome the Honorable Dr. Pandor, our keynote speaker. Besides the portfolio of Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, you probably know that Dr. Pandor has served in several other ministerial positions, including Minister of Higher Education, Minister of Science and Technology, Minister of Home Affairs, and I repeat again, Minister of Education. Dr. Naledi, there might be others that I haven't mentioned, but it seems you've covered most of the ministries that we have. Dr. Pandor has had a very strong presence in education, having taught or held leadership positions at a number of institutions. She has noted, and I quote, that human rights should be available to everybody, equally, and not to some. And that if we say that we're committed to freedom, human rights, and democracy, it doesn't mean to a particular country or people, it means all over. We warmly welcome you, Dr. Pandor.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the kind introduction. I used to be all right until I reached 70, and then something happened to my legs. Deputy Vice-Chancellor, distinguished senior leadership of the university, the Moabi and Omar families, guests joining us today, students, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you all. Dumelang Molweni. Prof, I've taken the liberty as speaker to change the theme of what I shall talk about today. I hope as I meander that I might address the matters that were of interest to the Institute. If they're not, then the author is to blame, and I accept all responsibility. So what I chose to talk about is what I've called the problems of being a sore thumb. That of South Africa pursuing human rights in the midst of a toxic geopolitical environment. I just think it's important that we do assert this notion of South Africa accepting that it can be a sore thumb, because I think that will set us apart from the rest of the world. I don't think we should just be like everybody else. The world needs difference in attitude to human rights, to peace and safety, to international law, to international humanitarian law, and all the frameworks that seek to make us human. And so I've really chosen to focus on this notion of a sore thumb. I think I should begin by saying the subjects of peace, safety, and human rights are critically important subjects for a democratic South Africa. They are fundamentally a liberating framework for all people, but most specifically liberating for those who have previously been subject to oppression and domination. Their presence and practical implementation offer enjoyment of the benefits of freedom, justice, and democracy. Of course, as we all know, and as has been said by the early speakers, the actions of governments and of civil society organizations play critical roles in effecting the benefits of these liberating tools. So they can exist but not be enjoyed. It is the action of governments, of civil society, that ensure that we as people benefit from them. These social actors provide useful indicators of the level of genuine commitment of institutions to the ideals which are for us set out in our Constitution, and in particular its Bill of Rights. The writers of South Africa's Constitution were the first freely elected members of Parliament. They made every attempt to integrate our past odious experience and our fresh, brave ambitions into our new constitutional document. There are many in our country, I know, who believe the Constitution is imperfect in that there are caveats and silences that, in their view, fail to fully address the post-apartheid transformation agenda. These commentators are correct in part. However, I believe the document is empowering and contains the ability to help realize our liberation ambitions if fully acted upon. So the fault is not the Constitution, it is those who must act on it. And we need to be more direct in challenging the social actors to give effect. So when we talk economic inclusion and liberation, we should be more direct toward the private sector, that it has not done as much as it could in South Africa, and is focused primarily on appropriating greater profit rather than ameliorating the legacy of apartheid, which is so much a part of the life of the majority in our country. It is my view that the process of developing our constitution benefited from decades of our established tradition of striving for and imagining liberation and freedom. South Africa's struggle against colonialism and apartheid was influenced by the advanced human rights commitment of the liberation organizations that drew on progressive ideals of freedom, such as in the UN Charter process and in documents such as our Freedom Charter of 1955, the Women's Charter of 1958, and other documents to craft the proposed character of a liberated South Africa. So well before freedom, we had already begun to imagine what kind of democratic society we would want to have. The leaders who are honored in this annual lecture series, Mr. Dalla Omar and Mr. Moabi, contributed significantly to shaping post-apartheid South Africa's posture and practice of human rights, peace, and safety. There are many academics, intellectuals, political scientists who are still grappling to fully understand the underlying philosophies that influence the oppressed in South Africa to become leading proponents of key tenets of peace, safety, and human rights. Often the sentiment following oppression is one of retribution, one of seeking revenge. And yet for South Africans, a very different philosophical attitude emerged. The oddity of post-apartheid South Africa is that the drafters of the emerging democratic state believed in the ideals they inserted into the Constitution and attempted to live out their social and political lives as a reflection of these beliefs. This assertion can best be illustrated by a few choice examples of influence that I chose. Each of the examples exhibits the high ideals of a full commitment to peace, safety, and human rights, as well as exposes through lived experience the horrific depth of human cruelty that can result from the neglect of human rights for all. The first illustrative example for me is Stephen Bantu Biko, a young man who saw humanity in every person and who had the courage, despite being denied enjoyment of human rights, to expect all persons to respect the human dignity of another. Biko developed his ideals of human rights from his observation of how the oppressed sometimes tolerated disempowerment and almost enabled it, thus diminishing their own humanity. And he simultaneously noted how the oppressor or the powerful refined the notions of superiority and control into a practiced art form. Biko, in asserting the equality and humanity of all persons, posed a troubling challenge for the apartheid oppressor. He argued for self-awareness and self-empowerment through encouraging self-realization, a deeply powerful instrument of consciousness. The impactful meaning of Biko's Black consciousness as non-racism was a potent human rights posture, hence the vicious violence he experienced as a state response. The late Dalla Omar, similar in influence, led the process of transforming our apartheid-influenced justice system through introducing the idea that law must serve justice, human rights, and democracy. Alongside developing a responsive legal system and advancing transformation, Minister Omar insisted on transforming the courts, advancing gender equality in the justice system, and establishing an efficient judicial institution shielded from arbitrary influence of executive interference. His contribution extended well beyond his official duties. He recognized the strong support that could be provided by civil society organizations, through them offering local legal services to communities. And he empowered paralegal officers to ensure professional advice was available to communities that lacked access to legal services. As Minister Omar often reminded his officials, democracy begins when a woman in a rural village secures a protection order against abuse, when a young person obtains an ID to vote or to apply for study, and when an elderly person challenges an unlawful eviction successfully. Ndate Johannes Moabi made an indelible contribution to our freedom struggle, leading and supporting his organization, the Pan-Africanist Congress, internally and in exile. And of course, as I stand here, I'm one of those who served with Ndate Peko in Parliament. As with many freedom fighters, Ndate Moabi's leadership meant sacrifice, meant prison, meant torture, or even death. Nonetheless, he was tireless until freedom was secured and returned from exile to serve his country through skills training at this institution and the promotion of the human rights, of health, of peace, and security. His role in the struggle amplified the rights of all persons through asserting their human dignity and worth as human beings. Our Bill of Rights honors Moabi in recognizing civil, political, and socioeconomic rights. Of course, there are many women leaders who also shaped human rights, peace, and safety in South Africa, in the continent, as well as globally. An outstanding pioneer for me was Charlotte Maxeke, who contributed to youth empowerment through education, contributed to international cultural and people exchanges at a very early stage, and to gender equality. Maxeke regarded education as a vital institution for empowerment. She formed important partnerships with the African American community of progressive liberators, drawing on education, culture, and community empowerment to advance her ideas of transformation. She led the creation of a vibrant women's movement as an organized precursor to the ANC Women's League. All this was courageously achieved in an era in which women faced prejudice, exploitation, and exclusion. Now, always recall the story of Charlotte Maxeke being the only woman who went to the founding meeting of the African Native Congress in the Free State and had to sit in a corner for 7 hours while the males participating in that conference deliberated on whether a woman could attend it. In the end, with the support of Sefako Makgato, who became the first president, she was able to stay in the conference. But imagine sitting for 7 hours silent while men debate about you. What a courageous figure. These individuals and many others gave shape to our human rights and our attachment to pursuing human rights, peace, and safety. Post-apartheid South Africa's attachment to these ideals and their practice locally and internationally have imposed on South Africa the character of South Africa as a sore thumb in the global community. A sore thumb stands out, makes its presence felt, cannot be ignored, and is relentless in its agony. It is this South African character that I believe has influenced our interaction with the global community. And it is this character of distinction that I believe we must maintain and never give up on. The historic liberating commitments and examples that I have described are found in many different countries, so I'm not saying we are unique and on our own, and they are practiced in a range of ways. Our concern, however, in this present time has to be the increasing failure of our globe to execute our responsibility to implement human rights and to promote peace and safety. The practice of and respect for international law has been in decline in the past 4 decades. The early treaties and conventions which express international law were drafted within the United Nations system post-World War II. They set out a global promise of progressive human rights and progressive international and humanitarian law. The flawed character of the institutional form of the United Nations at its inception has been a contributor to the decline in respect for human rights. In particular, the composition of the United Nations Security Council and the veto power assigned to the Permanent Five have resulted in inefficiency, lack of responsiveness, and lack of commitment to safety and security of the world. A toxic addition to this failure has been the unipolar ambitions and practices of the United States of America alongside its Western allies. While we do admit historically that international law has helped us avoid a world war for more than 80 years, the role of Europe and America have created a context in which the practice of international law is impacted by growing double standards in interpretation and practice. For instance, Russia's occupation of Ukraine territory is regarded as infringement of sovereignty, while the occupation of Palestine by apartheid Israel is accepted as a move of self-defense by Israel. This situation is worsened by the practices of Islamophobia, of racism, of Zionism, and of economic exploitation. The unilateral actions of war and unauthorized sanctions practiced by the United States and its allies have created a dangerous world in which the innocent are severely vulnerable and unprotected. So recently we had Francesca Albanese here as a guest speaker for the Nelson Mandela Annual Lecture. Immediately upon her being announced as our guest, we started to receive indications that we were in breach of sanctions of the United States. Now, the only sanctions member states of the UN have to be faithful to are those voted upon and agreed by the United Nations, not sanctions imposed by one nation. But suddenly, because it's the United States of America, everyone is afraid, and we must run helter-skelter, changing our practices because of one nation. And our fault is we have given legitimacy to unilateral action, and it's something we all need to address. I believe that the unilateral actions of war and unauthorized sanctions practiced by the United States have created a dangerous world in which the innocent are severely vulnerable and unprotected. Conflict for profit and global control has fueled abuse of human rights in Sudan, in the DRC, in Palestine, and indeed in Ukraine. Many member states of the United Nations have failed to utilize the United Nations prescripts to uphold human rights and have failed to use them to promote peace, safety, and security. They have permitted the possible contribution of these prescripts to progressive liberation to be held in prison by a rampant, powerful unipolarity. This toxic geopolitical context stands as a severely weak foundation for expanding the full enjoyment of human rights, and is something we all should be rejecting, objecting to, and addressing effectively. Double standards that derive from economic weight and military might have neutralized the probability of human rights access and improved peace and safety. So what are the prospects for the vulnerable? Sudan, the DRC, and Palestine are the clearest examples of the failings of international law. Despite protections such as international humanitarian law, such as the existence of the Rome Statute and the International Criminal Court, innocent civilians in these territories are victims of war crimes, of rape of women, of no access to humanitarian aid, and of a range of genocidal actions, as we have seen in Palestine, as we see in Eastern DRC, and as we are seeing today in Al-Fasher in Sudan. The involvement of wealthy nations in exploiting the mineral resources of these countries and fueling internal division severely harm the likelihood of peace and safety. It is clear that countries such as South Africa and other leading countries of the South should play a stronger role in asserting the practice of human rights and the promotion of peace and safety. South Africa's positive, sore-thumb character is important in this regard. Our country indicated its ability to act for humanity when it tabled the genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. This kind of readiness to act in the interest of the vulnerable is what Biko, Omar, and Moabi lived for. I think There is a new reality beginning to emerge, but it needs stronger teeth. We have reason for hope that a South ideological resurgence along the lines of the old non-aligned movement or the Organization of African Unity and the early UN could emerge as a restoration of human rights, peace, and safety. Recently emerging formations such as BRICS, the refreshed African Union, the recently formed Hague Group, and recently established Progressive International could be a precursor to these positive emerging changes. Civil society organizations, youth formations, and professional associations should work closely with such organizations and influence their focus toward progressive objectives of economic inclusion, shared prosperity, and increased peace and safety. These were the ambitions of the leaders we honor today. South Africa's ICJ case on genocide and the growing global movement in support of Palestinian sovereignty indicate a hopeful return to creating a world in which international solidarity for human rights, peace, and safety can be realized. As Francesca Albanese said in this year's annual Nelson Mandela Lecture, all of us can make a difference in creating a better world. In saying this, she was quoting Nelson Mandela, who said that we sometimes define ourselves as being unimportant and insignificant to the world. But he said, actually, your significance lies in what you do. And everybody has the ability to do something. And Albanese was reminding us of this using our own leader as an example. We as South Africa have the framework for improved prospects, and increased attention has to be given to making that framework a reality for every person in our country, in Africa, as well as globally. Of course, I must, as I conclude, assert that I do have concern for civilian casualties in Israel, but the primary concern is the freedom of the Palestinian people, because they are suffering oppression and occupation. And so we should never be forced into a situation in which we are made to appear to believe that being occupied and experiencing apartheid-type laws means you are equivalent to a state that feels it is under threat. Palestinians do not enjoy freedom. Palestinians do not enjoy the human rights we love. Palestinians are not liberated. Israel is a state, and it is imposing oppression on the people of Palestine. So the two are not equivalent by any means. One has powerful allies that support its oppression. The other is left to us as civil society to act in support of. So if you're an activist, I say to you, continue to do something. If you're not yet an activist, if you don't quite understand the harm of Zionism, I ask you to read, because you are in an academic institution, and you could learn the meaning of the harm of such practices, and then understand why it is so vital for you to appropriate Moabi and Omar into your own lived experience. So thank you very much to Unisa for inviting me, and I wish you all well.
Some questions after that.
Yes, I think we're going to have a respondent perhaps after that. Yeah.
What do you want to say? Yeah, sure. Thank you, Dr. Pandor. A thought-provoking address. You covered great terrain, but for myself, you centered the global, as well as the South African human rights, peace and safety agenda as it currently stands. Thank you for connecting that to the contributions made by Joe and Omar over the years. I want to welcome our respondent, who is going to give some further comments and perhaps open up a little bit of a discussion. There'll be an opportunity for some questions. The respondent is Professor Seth Cooper. Now, Prof. Cooper has had an illustrious career, especially around the transformation of psychology, but far broader than that. I speak and focus on psychology because of my own connections. He is a past president of the Pan-African Psychology Union, of the International Union of Psychological Science, and also of the Psychological Society of South Africa. Prof. Cooper was seminal. His work was seminal in transforming psychology, and Seth was present and one of the drivers at the birth of a transformed psychology and I suppose broader healing practices for South Africa, but also more broader than that for Africa. Seth has played a key role in the anti-apartheid struggle and the advent of democracy in South Africa. Prof. Cooper, we welcome you and thank you for joining us.
My acknowledgements to the leadership of this institution. It's my alma mater. In the days when I was in Robben Island and could not study, even though studies were allowed, our group, being university students, weren't allowed to study, and in the last 2 years, managed to complete my degree with Unisa. I also want to acknowledge that on the 150th anniversary of this institution, I got the Chancellor's Calabash Award. But more historically significant is this hall, named after one of the greatest intellects of the continent, and her granddaughter, and his granddaughter, has presented. I identify with all that, and I'm just going to do a play. Your Grace has said. And try in the few minutes that I have to raise, I think, issues that should prod us to think about our condition. Today is also the Remembrance Day for the victims of political repression, a day recognized since 1991 by the United Nations. Having said that, this is the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. And I heard the nuance of non-aligned, BRICS Plus, the Hague Group, and the AU. And I think that is where, despite the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which the United Nations Security Council repeatedly violates, in its treatment of the majority world. When it was formed, it was the the second great European war, because most of Africa and Asia and Latin America was colonized. And so the membership was them, the minority. The colonialists and those who in 1886 decided what the borders of Africa should be. I'm impressed by some of the leadership in the BRICS Plus and the more recent formations, because they've decided to put their mouths and their pockets in the same place. Because and our minister knows this, if you go to many of the UN headquarters, these have become fiefdoms in themselves. That's why 2 years ago, the Secretary General had to have an advisor on racism, eradication of racism, not in the United Nations, but at the United Nations headquarters. So the colonialism perpetuates itself. And the majority world, in the spaces that have been mentioned by Professor Ashley van Niekerk, that I am part of, says the minority world controls knowledge and, importantly, the messaging. And right now, online messaging, it's wrongly called social because it's so anti-social. It perpetuates an inferiorization of all of us who may not be conceived in the opening lines of the Bible. God created man in his image. And then we look at the positions that South Africa, and through the then foreign minister, international relations, took. And if it wasn't for that singularity, we may not have had the outcomes we had. So that is an acknowledgement. However, many of our leadership have said one thing and done another. Currently, what was the state's arms provider of bullets is owned by Germany. We sold that. This country sold it. And it provides bullets in Europe because that caliber is not available. Our coal is being sold to Israel. So the hypocrisy is massive. And then when the clamor is very high, the oneness, and Madiba's resounding words of there can be no freedom without the freedom of Palestine, gets rubbished. And we are notorious for inward looking and looking at ourselves as exceptional. That which gave rise to democracy, I'm not going to say freedom because we're not free. Clearly we're not free because the means for the agency to control ourselves, our resources, our country, our election system is not with us. And the original mistake at the end of 1993, which was, we'll have this interim arrangement, has become permanent, thus removing government from people. So the recent happenings, if there was a vote for president, Mkhwanazi would become our president. It is telling that when that happens and you have certain people, I personally know some of the persons, and they say things that they think they can get away with when everything is discoverable. No, I stopped at that house and I greeted, and I didn't know who that person was. I've known all the presidents in this country, and the person I've known the longest is our current president, because then at the University of the North, he was arrested when we organized the Viva Frelimo rallies. On the 10th year of Frelimo declaring the armed struggle, and after the Carnation Revolution, and all hell broke loose. I've known Dalla Omar as my attorney in Robben Island. I've known Joe Moabi after Robben Island. And I can say that the majority of our people now don't want to hear about liberation. They don't want to hear about the Constitution. Not because there's anything inherently wrong in those institutions and events, but because of how they've been handled by the people we have entrusted with our freedom, with our democracy, bringing us to our knees, allowing extractive colonization, well, let me rephrase that, allowing the colonial advent to remain, allowing extraction, allowing an arrangement where I can become the chair or CEO of a company. So you see now, it isn't as cut and dried as when it was when we fought a white minority group. Now we're going to see Lebogang and I'm using it deliberately, going to be arguing about them. And I remember in 1983, a few months after being released from Robben Island, organizing a national forum of all those who opposed the system. And some very well-known figures said, what about this I won't mention the organization. What about that organization? So we already had people arguing for inclusion of those who clearly are now one of the main civil society organizations, the Race Relations. And so the argument on the land question, black empowerment, they make those questions. They raise those questions. Our intellectuals have no answer for them. Our youth, my children, don't want to participate in politics because they recognize a stench associated with it. But it's become the new economic activity. Look at the last local government elections, look at the last national elections. Former party, Cooper's party, I come in, I'll earn 100,000 rand in parliament a month. So there's a huge distance. And all the good we do on a principled, on an entirely committed basis, that wherever there is an injustice committed, anywhere in the world, that if we who have experienced that crime against humanity are unable to empathize. We may not be able to do anything or say anything, but we're unable to empathize. We've lost that part of our humanity. We've also tended to have fatigue very quickly. So now you raise the question of what's happening in Gaza. It's a fatigue. Our own national broadcaster represents it in a way that you wonder, what are we representing? What truths are we representing? There's an ahistoricity, and it's almost following the same neoliberal agendas of those who control the election system. The same few families hedge their bets. They give this party. They know who they want to give the majority of the money to. Our elections are not fair and free because we do not have the ability to put up candidates and have them win. Shades of July 2021. Then July 2025 with Mkwanazi's revelation. We're going to go to a local government election next year. There's going to be a bloodbath. The faith in leadership at all levels has diminished drastically. I want to come to Madiba's defense, Last year, on the anniversary of his death, there was not even a squeak. How easily we forget. And then there's been trashing of his memory. Because most of us feel, well, Madiba did reconciliation. And I can assure you, knowing that period, that if it weren't for the caliber of the Madibas and the few others, we wouldn't have had the kind of stability and election outcome that we had, whatever we may think of some of those processes. So, yes, recently we celebrated an important anniversary of the Freedom Charter. I come from a tradition where I was in the Congress and then I was not in the Congress. But I can say to you that if 1/10 of the Freedom Charter were implemented, I will take a vow of silence forever. Because it does not suit the persons in power who are being exposed almost daily for the shenanigans. They've assumed political power for other benefit. So I also used to say serve, suffer, and sacrifice. I want to say the sacrifice element, and my PAC comrades agree that yes, it was at that time. Because can our people continue to suffer? Yes, sacrifice, but suffer the way they are. We're the most unequal society on earth, and nobody says anything or attempts to put forward a way out of it. If we looked at our budget, the 600 and something billion payment on debt is merely servicing the debt. Your great-great-great-grandchildren will not extinguish that debt because the extractive economy is in the hands of the few. And when you look at the spokespersons, you'll see people like me. You'll see people like yourselves because they represent those interests. That hypocrisy needs to stop. It cannot stop unless we call them out on it. So mine is a call for really stopping the whataboutism that's endemic in our society, where many people say, well, why should I bother there because I'm worried about this? And we are so consumed with our own issues that when that injustice happens somewhere else, we don't even care. And when we come to a place where it doesn't prick our conscience, we may not be able to do anything about it, as I say. But if it doesn't, then it means we've lost our humanity. And we are the same biology. We're the same human family. Ons is dieselfde, siafana. Kodwa every moment the othering happens. And the majority continues to be marginalized and become permanent in their marginalization. But wait for it. Just around Christmas and thereafter, everybody will promise heaven, but hell will remain in their lot. So that pessimism says there's hope. That if each of us does something about it, we will change what we do. And the majority of you represent the majority in our country. By age, by exclusion, and by hopelessness. Right now, kids are writing matric, some 900 and something thousand. The overwhelming majority of them will join the unemployment lot. The exclusions, the highest unemployment rate, the lowest employment rates in the world that are recorded. And what we do, we look at somebody else who's in our country, eking out an existence, being exploited in those corner shops, in those factories that have very little safety and other elements to them, and we say, that's our problem. So we're unable to distinguish who is the problem. We look at those who look like us and say, they are the problem. But when they come here, they come with nothing, and they try to find a way of survival. But they become our target. And many, and I remember in the 2006, 2005 period when Alex blew up, government was shocked. The Johannesburg Metro Police intervened. We still don't have a response. And if you listen to some of our former liberatory movement's representatives, you'll be shocked that these were the people, well, they were not. Their forebears were. But they represent those lofty principles of our common humanity. Let us not lose that common humanity. How we treat the worst off amongst us underpins our own claim to being human. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. Cooper, for your reflections, for provoking us and ensuring we think about what's been discussed this morning. We have some time. I think it's almost time for lunch, and I'm sure your thoughts are going to start wandering in that direction. But we have some time for 3 or 4 questions, a round of questions. Let's take a few, and then Dr. Pando, if you will take a few, and you can respond, and perhaps Prof. Cooper, if there are any for you as well. And then we'll go to closure. I'm going to invite Prof. Sigalo to join us. Prof, do you want to join us at this point? And Prof. Puleng will give us a a few rounding points to conclude this morning's discussion. I'll introduce you properly in a few minutes. So, colleagues, are there any questions? There should be a roving mic. I see number 1 here, 2, 3. Let's take 3 or 4. If you can keep your question or your comment, if you can keep it brief and to the point, and we'll take 3 or 4, depending on how much is there.
Thank you very much.
Can you introduce yourself when you talk? Thanks.
Thank you very much. My name is Lefangari Mengi, currently student here at Unisa. Well, mine is directed to Honorable Dr. Naledi Pandor. Since Israel and Gaza are negotiating for peace ordered by countries such as Egypt, Qatar, and United States. So my question is that, what is your comment on the brutality or genocide that Israel did by killing the innocent people, and what action should we take other than that of International Court of Justice, as we know that it will take years to be ruled? So I thank you.
Thank you. The 2 on the side. Oh, you're going to take, there's 1 there first, yeah?
Good morning, everyone. This is Nomsa from Vlakfontein Men's Forum. Thank you for the invite. Unfortunately, it's a comment that resonates with short-term character. We find our country has great policies and governments in place, but no implementation that has been put into place. Our new generation have no role models like our heroes of democracy of the past to look up to, where they were a symbol of peace, ubuntu, and safety, but they only know violence, corruption, and entitlement. Civil society work in silos on the ground, scraping each and every information they can get to make an impact in the community, facing red tape of funding opportunities, facing power-hungry entrepreneurs, facing poverty-stricken community. Now G20, our country is going to hold G20. We'll be hosting in our country, but little is known in our community. Civil society committee under poverty, elevation, and food security cluster grumbles to secure funding to educate community about the G20 summit. It seems to struggle to engage the concern of the whole community, and you find ourselves in shambles, not knowing what will G20 be after, when it is done. So I thank you. That was my comment, and Professor already took some of my notes. I thank you.
Thanks, Nams. Shall we take 1 or 2 more and then engage with them? Yeah.
My name is Debo from Tembelihle in Indonesia. I'm one of the youth in my Kasi. I just have some question. It's for everyone who's in the parliament. My worry is, my question is that it's about education, especially in a young foundation, a first foundation in the primary. We have a problem of in primary, the children there in primary, the huge problem is that children are getting overpopulated. So when they go to the secondary, most of children are dropping out because of the problem we get in the primary. So my question is that, how can we help around the overpopulated children in primary so that they can be educated primary before they can be removed to the secondary? Because the problem is what? Most of the children in secondary, they are dropping out because they didn't get a good education in primary. So just why you see that most of the children that are dropping out are sitting in tech shops, are becoming sources. They are playing dice, and there's no foundation that is going to help them, especially when we as a youth, especially we as the leaders. I don't like to call myself a leader, because leaders are the people who are wanted to benefit first before they can help youth. So I don't like it. But I'm an activist in my Kasi. But the question is, how can we help these children to get a good education, especially in primary, before they can go to the secondary? So that's my question. I hope, Doctor, can you just talk to the Minister of Education that he must come to one of my my town there. We have a real problem. I don't want to lie. I can mention one school is Apex Primary School. They got a lot of children. But when we go to the secondary that I know is Azara, it's good. They have a pass rate that is good. But when we go to from grade 9 until grade 10, most of the children are dropping out. And we are trying as a youth just to give them a skills development. But remember, when we talk, we don't have powers. But when you talk about tenders, it's where they're going to wake up, especially when you talk about councillors. They're not doing nothing in the ground. They are focusing on benefiting on things that are not even going to help them. Because of after they're removed, they are coming back to the street. They're going to come to be in your place, those councillors.
Thanks, thanks, Tapopo. I think we'll take this as the last one, and then we'll have some response.
Good morning to everyone. Morning to Dr. Naledi Pando. My name is Luke. I'm a community member representing a community and also representing my daughter who is a student here at Unisa. First, I'd like to say thank you for the lecture. It's empowering. However, there are questions or concerns that I do have, especially what most of the speakers have highlighted, the leadership and what is happening, especially in South Africa. We also appreciate the role that you have played in what is happening in Palestine. It's a great concern, not only to South Africa, but to the world. We know the history. We know the double standard that the UN is playing, especially the USA. However, what can I say is that we are with them through our prayers and through whatever means we can do to get the freedom that was prophesied by the former President Nelson Mandela, that as long as the Philistines are not free, we are also not free yet. So we are praying for the freedom. But concerning the leadership in South Africa and what is taking shape, because shortly I'll just summarize in saying that in today's leadership, we are deprived. I think the whole society and holistically, we are deprived. Means through education, how we view it today, it becomes, they are privatizing it because it becomes the most expensive thing for one to access education. And during the times of Dala Oma, they fought for that. They fought for the education. But now somehow the leadership of today are reversing that. And you go again to a lot of things. It's about privatization of everything. You look at ESCOM, it becomes expensive for us to access that because of the privatization. You buy solars, you must pay for it now. As you have alluded, our coals, we have a problem of load shedding, and yet the coal is transported and sold to Israel. Diamonds are sold to Israel to create jobs for them, whilst we, the citizens of South Africa, who owns those minerals, we don't have jobs. We don't have any means of creating jobs. And I've once listened to the former President Thabo Mbeki when he spoke about how the industry, especially the textile industry, died when we entered the freedom. He alluded that big guys like Rupert and all those guys were not willing to invest when the China gave us the opportunity that if you can invest to us, then we will give you the technology. The question is, now they've got shares in all these companies. Previous leaders, they've got shares in all these companies. And there are many. Why can't they come back and invest and revive those industries to create employment opportunities and to make education to be accessible, the energy to be accessible to everyone? But now we are seeing that it's taking another shape. South Africa is taking another shape. The informal settlement, it's a big issue. There's no land, particularly for a black child. There is no space. There is no education. There is nothing. We are put in a corner and ignored by the leadership of today. So what mechanism we can or you can provide that can be used to address those problems? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Dr. Pando, you, if you can give us your reflections, and then we see if Prof. Cooper has things to add. I know lunch is ready, so I'm not sure if there are further questions, but we're getting to the last part of the program, and Prof. Sagalo will draw some final points together. If there are questions, we can perhaps discuss them over lunch. Further questions. Dr. Pando?
Thank you very much, Professor. I think I want to begin by saying one of the things that I do avoid in life is focusing constantly on the negative. I think it's a very debilitating practice because there are, of course, so many problems everywhere. And I particularly avoid this when I'm in an academic institution that has huge research potential. So for me, you being in a university means you should be devoting more time to investigating these problems and seeking out solutions. What I have become concerned about in our country is we're very good at describing the problem and have become extremely weak at identifying what the potential solutions might be. So I do think we need to approach our dilemmas in a different way, with a more positive sense that we can find solutions. Now, to come to the actual problems, or questions rather, I think, yes, there's a paucity of role models in our society, well, particularly because we tend to look at politicians. I don't know why we think they're the most important people in the world. In most mature democracies, they're the least important. And I'm not sure that's where we should look for role models. I look at people like DJ Coffee as a role model because he created his own enterprise and made a success of it. And we should be looking at entrepreneurship much more than we do at this moment. On the question of integrity, I think values and principles are transmitted from family, community, nation, organization. And we need to reassert and insert positive values in our society. We have become dishonest, we are greedy, and it's not just the politicians. It's a society emerging from an illegal, oppressive system that encouraged hatred and could only survive through the absence of integrity. We didn't have integrity before, and we've not done enough to insert integrity and positive values into our society. So there's work for us to do. When I get that NSFAS check, I mustn't spend it on brandy. I must buy my textbooks with it. When I get the NSFAS check, I shouldn't be organizing a party in my university residence. I should spend it on ensuring I've got notebooks, a pen, and sufficient data for wireless connection if necessary. We all look at NSFAS as the problem, but I haven't yet seen research on how we as students who are recipients of that fund utilize the resources that we get. Now, I know students will get very angry with me, but I'm not here to make you happy. I'm here to challenge you. And if we are to overcome our legacies of apartheid, we must deeply challenge ourselves. On G20, G20 is not a panacea. G20 is an organization made up of the G7 countries and a number of emerging economies that sit together, and their remit is supposed to look at the economies of the world and how they might together address issues of economic inclusion, of reducing harm through the various economies, and how they can build working international collaboration to address the many negatives that exist in the world. G20 has lost some of its focus through trying to do everything and through really moving away from the developmental agenda that had been its core agenda at the inception of the G20 group. So it's not necessarily an answer to all that we need to address. It is a forum for deliberation. From time to time, it makes excellent decisions and progress, such as in the context of the economic crisis or the post-COVID debt issues that confronted many of our economies. The G20 came together and devised a number of solutions and gave direction to the awful Bretton Woods institutions to help to address some of the problems emanating from the COVID-19 impact on our various economies. But it's really not a panacea. It is quite a difficult group. On the matter of jobs, I think focusing largely on employment as the way forward, we're making a huge error. The way forward is to change the nature of our economy, is to make more good of small and medium-sized enterprises, is to provide funding for the marginalized so-called informal sector and micro-industries, and to allow those sectors to be the creators of opportunity for a livelihood. We also have to address the very high income levels. We are actually unequal, or called the most unequal society due to having the most unequal incomes of any of the economies in the world. Managers and executives are earning multiples that are disgraceful in comparison to workers and other levels in their industries. This is the same even in the state institutions. So one of the readiness we have to have is to address these income levels. And it means for us to have equality, some of us will have to accept that we should have less. The reason you have debt is because everything costs more and more. The reason why Eskom can't have cheaper electricity is because we don't pay for the electricity that there is. You know, I could be here giving you platitudes, telling you nice things, but the problem is when we became a new democracy, we didn't say it's actually comradely to pay for water and electricity, to pay for the services that you get from public institutions. Because the only way we can continue to have those services is if we get the necessary revenue to continue to provide them. Electricity doesn't just become available, it's not from the sky. All of these are issues that we must address. Now, often people say they want me to agree to become a president of this country, and I say, I'll never agree because people will hate me because I don't always say what they like. I think civil society in South Africa was weakened when we accepted the notion that everything would be done by the African National Congress. It's not possible for the ANC to do everything. And we have to strengthen civil society organs because we know in combating apartheid, they played a significant role. For example, many young people in rural communities would never have been able to access higher education if it were not for NGOs that ensured they secured international resources to fund young people from our rural villages and our small towns. It was non-governmental organizations, civil society, that played that role. Our trade unions have become bureaucratic. They're no longer playing a role of liberator. We need to bring trade unions back into the role they should play. We say thank goodness for the trade unions in Italy, for the stand they have taken. Not one trade union in South Africa has acted in similar fashion. So civil society has been weakened, and we need to restore it to its role in liberation. On primary school, again, you're in a university and you ask this question. I direct you to look at 4 excellent examples of research that has been done on 4 districts in Brazil that had the same level of poor outcomes we are experiencing in South Africa today. But through changing policy, through investing in foundations for education, through supporting improved teacher development, through securing families as part of support for their children learning. Because if at home you don't ask a child to read the letters to you that they learned in school that day, you're not going to embed that learning of foundations that we want. So look at some of those examples. In Brazil, it's very interesting research. We are trying some of it in South Africa and have begun to define a foundations for learning policy. But there is much that we can do. Even you as young people, hopefully being here at university, you are literate. Why are you not playing the role of a tutor in your communities? Just taking 5 or so children and saying every day or once or twice a week, I'm going to ask you to come and read to me. and I'll help you with some of your alphabet or numeracy or other elements. A society that is in transition to transformation needs social agents who are extremely active. And you can't point fingers. I expect Naledi to do it, or Mdladlana, or we all have to be party to effecting transformation. So to stop dropouts, we must tell children it's cool to be in school. My son told me I mustn't say cool, it's very boring these days. But that's what we used to say. So we should tell children it's cool, it's good, it's moja or whatever it is you say, to be a successful learner, to succeed in schooling, to do well. It should become something we admire. Rather the admiration for crooks, for gangsters, for thieves that we have in our society. Indeed, education has become extremely expensive. I agree, particularly for the marginalized and poor. I believe we have made efforts as South Africa with the over 30 billion that is devoted to the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. But there is something that is a problem. It's administration, it's corruption, it's a whole range of things. It's cost. It's whenever we see a penny, we want a pound. So landlords who had never been able to rent out to students now want to be paid $1 million for a room that they previously got no income from. We are greedy, and we have to change these practices. On Eskom, I think more investment in renewable energy sources, greater competition in the sector of a positive kind would be of assistance. On coal sales to Israel, our trade unions must agree, as the Italian ones have, that they will not lift that export product. It won't get onto the ships at Richards Bay. Until we do that, we're not going to make much progress. I've spoken to, I think, some of the other issues. I think we must be ready to have ownership of our mineral resources. We must be talking more and more about beneficiation and value addition, and about building industrial capacity, not just in South Africa, but in the region as a whole. Part of our weakness in economic terms is we've become an island of industrialization in a sea of the absence of productive capacity. So these are negatives that we have to address. And the best place to begin, I argue, is higher education, because that's where the brains reside. And that's where the brains can meet community in finding solutions. I think I'll shut up at this point. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Pando. Prof. Cooper, final take-home message for us.
I think that the majority in this room are younger people, just an eyeballing of who's present. And I think that this country needs to be led by the best amongst us. Now, we cannot allow the idiocy we see paraded around, because we've got such good people. And I know in the last, say, 10, 15 years, at least, younger people have said, I don't want to be in politics, I don't want to be part of this, and so on. How do you think we're going to staff the bureaucracy, number one? Number two, how do you think we're going to lead this country if the best brains in our society don't make themselves available? And I don't only mean at the political level, at all levels. And it starts, And you've raised, the young student raised the issue of the numbers in the classroom and how burdensome it is and how important formative early and primary education is, because it creates the foundation. And I don't think we actually know the history. One of the big tenets of the struggle, particularly post June 16, 1976, and next year will be the 50th anniversary of that watershed moment. Young people said, we don't want these large classes. What do you find? You find, I went, my buddy here, Opa, and I, and a few others went to Orlando East. And Orlando East has amongst the best schools in that Soweto, Meadowlands, Dobsonville area. In a high school, we asked what the student numbers were. 55, 56, 60. Now, when we went to high school, we had 40, 45. And because we had, you know, the big difference in apartheid and now, those who taught us couldn't do what all of you can do now. You couldn't become the astrophysicist, you could not become a pilot, you could not become an architect, you could not become a medical doctor unless you were sent to a special medical school, and then it was a small number. So we had the best teachers because they could not become those things. We knew Monday they would be drunk as a lord, but they taught. And they would say, what are you doing with X? Do you want me to tell your father? Right? They did that. I mean, they reeked of alcohol, but they taught. And we need to take a book of that, a leaf of that book, that we can do. And Minister Naledi has raised the issue. What are we doing? Why should it be some of us who continue doing that? I was vice chancellor in a university. We started a program where those who did very well had to be part of a tutorial program helping the others. You know how dramatically the results changed in 6 months. In 6 months. Simple things like that. And then the policies, you know, we've got the best policies in the world. Nobody bothers about them because we don't call the principal, the parent-teacher association to order saying, we can't continue with 65 girls in a school, this teacher teaching them, they're still doing well. But how can those kids get the best when it's stretched to that limit? We're not employing teacher aides. This year, yes, we are doing so. But I'm afraid those of you who have the qualifications are not part of that grouping. So we're going lower. We're not taking, we're barrel scraping, if you like. So that agency you have, you need to use that agency. The questions you're asking need to be asked of those people who are blocking. You need to ask the local councillor, what is it you are doing? Not before they come to elections. You need to ask them, have you visited that school? Have you done this? Have you done that? Because the community, there's no, number one, there's no community in many of our areas. I must say that. They've been destroyed. A fellow accused said to me, where the apartheid system failed, our democracy has succeeded. We've succeeded in destroying communities because of the dependency. Ask not what I can do, but what my government and what Minister said now, the ANC can do. They can't do anything beyond their limits anymore. It is up to you, new ideas. And the words and the language, I mean, I heard yesterday that our generation is called 1K. And there are all sorts of names for us. We're there as a sounding board. We're there to help you and guide you, and we'll scold you. But you should be doing, don't lose that agency. What's been lost during democracy, very seriously, is that agency. In those days, in the early 90s, I used to say, narrow white entitlement. That's become a culture. It's a disease now. Everybody feels entitled. Well, how much? What am I getting? Right? That's the part of the problem. What is in it for me? In Durban, where I come from a long time ago, they call them an eye specialist. Me, myself, I. Even in the same family, they will cut down the sister and brother for themselves. Mm-hmm. That sense of losing it in terms of all our cultures in this country, with the exception of English, however that English may be, there's a sense of respect. But questioning. We've lost that. We'll come in there and say, yes, a Naledi. Right? We have been lost to our background, and I'm not talking about recidivism, recidivist patriarchy, and so on. I'm talking about those good elements that actually made us who we are. I will never dare dream of using a first name with somebody I've known. I've known her father, by the way, before I knew her. But I would never dream of doing that in a public context. You know, but the way we treat each other, it says that teaching of Steve Biko, know thyself first before you can say somebody else should give you respect. If I don't have that respect, why should somebody else respect me? So I'm saying you have it. Improve that. Be better than your lecturers. Professor Sekhalo has got a dedicated chair. Show her you can do better, because then our education works. Then our system works. Then we're encouraging somebody else to grow up and become better than us. Many people tell me, my own kids and others tell me, yeah, but you can't tell me that, because it's you. You told me this. I'm now challenging you. Challenge, raise issues, and grow and lead in whatever sectors you are in. Lead. Don't allow people to bully you, because there's a law saying you cannot intimidate, threaten, and bully. Use the law. And right now, after Mkonazi, police are all over. So take advantage of it. Challenge people.
Thanks, Prof. Cooper. We're going to have some closing comments from Prof. Puleng Sekhalo. Prof. Sekhalo is a professor of psychology here at Unisa and the Chief Luthuli Research Chair. Puleng, thank you for taking this brief. I guess closing comments from you, and then we'll invite Prof. Talib to do a final vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Prof. Van Niekerk, Dr. Pando, Prof. Cooper. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, good day. I think it's good afternoon now. Dumelang. I have not much to say actually now that the comments that have just been made resonate very much with, I think, some of the issues that I wanted to tie together, because I was asked to bring everything together to say, what now? how do we go forward? And I think this links to some of the comments and the issues that you raised in your questions as well. So I'll just make a few points and hope that we can have some takeaway points and work to do when we go to our respective communities, schools, universities. I'm very happy that there's wide representation from our local communities as well. And I would like to thank the Institute for that, because often, again, when we have these conversations, we just have these conversations amongst ourselves, as academics, as intellectuals, but I think the work that we're doing, we always have to think about who is this work for, who is it meant to benefit, and are those that are meant to benefit also part of the conversation as well. So just a few thoughts. I think now in this 21st century, the century that was once imagined as a time of shared prosperity and cooperation, we can agree that it has instead become a crucible of converging crises, and many of those have been highlighted today. The rise of fascist politics, the deepening global inequality that we spoke about, the persistence of genocidal violence that keeps repeating itself, and the erosion of international accountability. And I think accountability was one of the themes that has been at the core of the conversation that we've had this morning. These are not isolated phenomenon, as we know. They are symptoms of a deeper structural malaise that is out there. We are witnessing a crisis of civilization, right? Who is in power? Who's the most powerful? How do we make countries great again, right? And at what cost? And at which lives being lost at the same time when that making great happens. This is the crisis that threatens national autonomy. It threatens what we're talking about this morning, and that is human dignity, and also the very principles of justice and freedom. So I just want to make a few points, 4 points that I hope then we can think about as we go home today, but also as a provocation, but an invitation to say what is our own individual responsibility in the spaces that we occupy as academics, as people who are activists in the communities, as people who are working within the NGOs. One of the things that Dr. Peku mentioned earlier, and then which ran throughout the conversations, was the need to defend freedom. Which freedom? Prof. Cooper spoke about the fact that we do not have the freedom. Can we speak about the freedom when there is such dire inequality in the world? When people do not have access to resources, when we can officially claim that load shedding is no longer there, but just go to some of our neighboring communities, the story will be different. We might not call it load shedding, but many of our communities still suffer. So what freedom are we talking about? I think, it was argued that freedom is therefore a continuous practice, and that's how we need to think about it as well. It is in our actions. What work are we doing? What action are we taking in our communities? It is also in our ethical stance. What do we do when we see injustice happening around us? Do we see it as our responsibility or someone else's responsibility? Ethical leadership is not only about people who are in government, in parliament. We are leaders in our communities. We are leaders in the universities. So taking an ethical stance means doing the work that we're doing wherever we are from an ethics perspective or ethically as we do that work. It is also in our refusal to keep quiet. It is not agreeing to look away in the midst of various forms of injustices that are out there in the world. And here we can take the example of South Africa with the ICJ to say we cannot keep quiet, knowing where we come from as a country, and to see the injustices and the genocide and a whole nation just really being killed like that. We cannot keep quiet as a country. So that is what freedom is about. We cannot be free if others are not free. We cannot claim to live and have liberty when others are not free. But it is also about engaging beyond personal gain. It was, I think, reiterated now that when you thrive, when you're earning 100,000 rand per month, and somebody else is earning 1,000 rand and they have to live with that, that's why then there'll be issues around having challenges with the petrol price going up, with Eskom prices going up, because the amount of money that people earn does not align with the cost of living and the access to resources or lack thereof. But it's also about centering the importance of transnational solidarity. And this goes back again even into our history on how, even as a country as South Africa, we could not have gained our independence had it not been for solidarity from other countries and other nations that were there fighting on our behalf and fighting along us, and also accommodating us in moments when people had to go to exile to make sure that they group and regroup and to come back and fight the oppression that was there in South Africa. So transnational solidarity is very important for freedom. Speaking out against these injustices, I think, is important. And then accountability. Accountability not only for ourselves, accountability for others as well, and holding others and each other accountable. Now, with all of these not being in place, clearly we cannot claim freedom, or we cannot claim to be free. And this freedom is also aligned and linked to what was spoken about the Bill of Rights, our Constitution, and saying our Constitution is wonderful, it's glossy, but when it comes to action and enacting the policies that are there, that is not happening. So we might hold others accountable or the government accountable, but who needs to enact this? Is it taught even in our schools? Do young children understand their rights? Do they understand what the Constitution is and what the Constitution is about? So I think sometimes we need to go back to the basics before we even think about the Constitution is a problem, or we have a beautiful Constitution, however these inequalities continue to be in place. How do we bring life to such documents? How do we understand the Constitution and how it comes to life in our everyday realities, in our everyday practices? We work with some schools around, and there's a group of young girls that we also work with, and through some of the activities that we do with them, part of the learning and the teaching also includes the idea of understanding their rights, but also the Constitution. So over and above what happens in the classroom and how one moves in the world, understanding what the Constitution means to you, what the Freedom Charter means to you, will enable you to speak out against injustice. How do you see injustice? How do you understand injustice if you don't understand or know what justice needs to look like? So that's also, I think, very, very important. And then coming back, as I'm moving towards closing, coming back to the idea of taking responsibility. I like the comment that you made, that you help young people with skills. And I think that's a step in the right direction. And if many activists or young people in the community did that work, we could get far. I come a bit after, Dr. Pando and Prof. Sats Cooper, but I can also still remember growing up in many of our communities. And one of the things that stood out for me, and I think that really encouraged and propelled me in terms of loving education, was some of the graduation parties that I used to see in the community. These are things that we don't see anymore. Now, after graduations, we go to a restaurant and invite 10 people and then just have dinner. Now, after graduations, we go and book a lodge somewhere and invite 50 people in a private space. So the importance of seeing is also very important. actually having graduation parties, things that we might think are mundane, goes a long way. When I had a graduation party in my community, afterwards, and I came back to Unisa and continued with my work, my mother called me because a number of people in the community started coming to my house. My daughter is doing matric. My daughter is struggling with this and that. And so Mama was now the secretary calling me and sending me messages because young people, but sometimes their parents, were coming home to come and ask some questions and ask for information. So we don't do career guidance in many of the schools anymore. I love technology. I love the social media, and we're an online institution. But at the same time, I think hybridity is very important. There still needs to be that human touch, because also we assume that everybody has got access, but not everybody has got access. So engaging intentionally in our communities, I think it's something that I would like to challenge us and encourage us to do. Many of the issues and challenges that were raised here today are things that we are aware of, things that we needed to be reminded of, to say when we look back in our history, when we think about Ntate Moabi and Ntate Oma, what is it that we think about? When we think about them as people who stood for justice, when Ntate Moabi actually worked in the communities and did the work of justice within the community, he understood the importance of engaging on a personal level with our communities. Many of our universities are ivory towers. We don't get our hands dirty, and that is a problem. So I think the education that we were talking about in terms of what kind of education is needed. Why is it that young people end up not going back to school? The question could be, what kind of education are they getting? Does it speak to them? Is it relevant to them? So our history and understanding who we are as a people, and this is where Bantu Biko becomes relevant again, that consciousness of understanding who we are as a people, seeing yourself in what you're learning in the classroom is very important because it excites you, it encourages you. Our history reminds us of where we come from and where we need to go. It is not by mistake that in the US, many of the history lessons or courses, and as I know even in our country now, history is not really encouraged or centered anymore. There are actually some schools that are not teaching history anymore. There is a lot of power in understanding where we come from in our history. And the fact that a whole government is entering the classrooms and universities and people are losing their jobs because they're teaching history shows you the importance of history in assisting people to be able to be conscientized, to be able to understand where they come from, to be able to understand their power, their worth. And without understanding that, then it becomes easy for us to fall within this fray of the neoliberalism that Prof. Cooper was talking about earlier. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think from my side, and not wanting to repeat some of the things that have already been said, is just the importance of reclaiming the human dignity that was raised. How do we do this? Meshalot Matleke, we were reminded today that it took her hours and hours, 7 hours just sitting while others were speaking on her behalf. We're still living at a time where gender equality is a challenge. We spoke about how unequal we are as a country in terms of resources and access. We're also one of the countries where there is highest gender-based violence in the world. And again, many women stood up. They refused to be quiet. Many women stood up and they fought for our liberation. Many women contributed to the independence that we are enjoying, or some level of freedom that we are now enjoying. However, many women are still living in fear. Many women die each and every day in our communities. What are we doing about it? I think we can write about these things, we can theorize about these things, But I think we are living in the communities. We also need to look at ways to move beyond theorizing to acting and understanding that it is our responsibility, not just the responsibility of the government or the responsibility of social development department, but that we carry the responsibility for the next generation. And just echoing what was said, Madame Albanese said, all of us can make a difference in creating a better world. A better world is only possible if all of us come together, take the responsibility, and saying, not on my watch. And with that, I pause and I thank you.
Professor Khalo, thank you very much for highlighting matters and offering us some closing comments on today's 20th lecture. We have some things to think about in terms of how the lecture builds and focuses going forward. And so we've noted lots to think about, I think. One aspect in terms of the celebration that we bring here, I think we do see the celebration of women's contributions to the different social justice struggles is something that I think can be highlighted. I don't know where we'll be in 20 years' time for the next 20 lectures, but the lecture is dynamic. And we are hoping that it stays and it grows as issues grow, just not in our country, but more globally. We're going to have someone doing the thanks in particular, but thank you all very much for spending your time here. I know that you are all intensely busy, but we deeply appreciate that you have joined us. We have much to think about as Unisa and Institute Collective, and so thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Prof. Talib, I'm not meaning to take your brief, so please step up. Naima is a colleague in the Institute, she's a professor, and she will do the closing and call on a couple of people to assist her, and then you'll be glad to know we're going straight for lunch.
We're going for lunch, so I'm going to keep it short. So good afternoon, everyone, Dr. Pandor, Prof. Cooper, Prof., and everyone, all protocols observed. Someone once said, those who work for justice may pass on, but the light they leave behind never fades. And it is in these words that this reflection feels especially fitting today as we honor the lives and legacies of two such lights, Dalla Omar and Joe Moabi, whose unwavering commitment to human rights, justice, and equality continues to inspire us all. So on behalf of the University of South Africa's Institute for Social and Health Sciences, it is my privilege to extend a heartfelt vote of thanks at the close of the 20th Annual Peace, Safety, and Human Rights Memorial Lecture. First and foremost, our profound gratitude goes to Professor Solomon Magano, our Acting Vice-Chancellor, and Vice Principal, Institutional Development, for opening today's program with an inspiring message of support that set the tone for a gathering grounded in reflection and human rights in a fragmented world. To Mr. Abdul Majid Mauser, representing the Omar family, and Dr. Lebogang Pheko, representing the Moabi family, we are deeply grateful. Your presence and your messages reminded us of the leadership, the humanity, compassion, and courage that define Dalla Omar and Joe Moabi. Thank you for continuing to walk this journey with us in keeping their vision of justice alive. A heartfelt thank you to Jamila Roshani. As Maya Angelou said, words mean more than what is set down on paper. It takes the human voice to infuse them with shades of deeper meaning. And I think you've done that for us today. Thank you. We are especially grateful to the Honorable Dr. Grace Naledi Pandor, Our esteemed keynote speaker who took the time out of a very busy schedule to grace us with a presence today. Our deepest gratitude for your profound and thought-provoking keynote that challenged and inspired us in equal measure. Your words have resonated deeply with us, serving as a powerful reminder that the pursuit of peace, justice, and human rights is not merely a historical endeavor, but a vital responsibility that each generation must wholeheartedly embrace. We also wish to express our sincere appreciation to Professor Seth Cooper for your thoughtful and critical reflection that deepened our engagement with the themes of justice and human rights and bringing it home, reminding us that we have yet to attain freedom and it is our duty to do something about the injustice and exclusion our people continue to suffer. We are equally grateful to Professor Puleng Sikhalo for your closing comments and for so eloquently bringing together the threads of today's reflections and discussion. And to Professor van Niekerk, a special word of thanks, not only for leading such a rich and engaging discussion, but also for your dedication in organizing and chairing today's event with such care and excellence. Thank you, Prof. Thank you to Unisa, our VC and college for your continued support and representation. And thank you to all the ISHS staff members and our director as well. To Kone Jacobs, Ms. Nkesang Maluleka and team for the sound and venue setup. To Unisa Multimedia team for live streaming and the photography. Mr. Mamo Rubela for the protocol that we all had to observe. And a big thank you to the organizing team and admin staff for their hard work in making all the arrangements to ensure today's success. Finally, to everyone present here, especially our community members, we honor your presence greatly. Thank you for joining us today, for listening deeply, for your engaging questions, and your enthusiastic participation, and for keeping alive the legacy of two extraordinary South Africans who showed us what it means to serve humanity with courage and conviction. May we leave today not only inspired by the lives of Dullah Omar and Joe Moabi, but also challenged to continue their work, to build communities of justice, to defend the vulnerable, and to nurture peace in a world that so desperately needs it, as indicated by our speakers today. Thank you. Noma, where are you? So we'd like to call on stage first Professor Solomon Mkhano. To receive a small token of appreciation for your support and presence. Thank you, Prof. Must Prof stay on the stage? Thanks. Mr. Abdul Majid Mauser, representing the Omar family. Dr. Lebogang Pheko. Yeah. And then Mr. Khotso Moabi to receive a gift on behalf of us for his mom. I'd like to call on stage Shamila Roshani. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Dr. Pando, we call on stage. Oh, it's got Zoom. I will stand with you now. Prof. Maritz, can you come on stage, please? Prof. Cooper. Prof. Sichalo.
Thanks, Naima. Thanks, colleagues. We're going off for lunch. We'll take a couple of group photos and then we'll all go for lunch. Have a wonderful lunch. Travel safely back home, and we'll see you in a year's time. Okay.
Is it written somewhere?